Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to dive deep into a really radical idea. What if your mind doesn't create your reality, but actually receives it? This whole explainer is based on some fascinating source material provided at the request of Sachin Karnik, and trust me, it's going to challenge pretty much everything you think you know about consciousness. You know, for decades, we've had this one dominant metaphor. The brain is a computer. It processes data, it stores memory, it runs programs. It makes sense, right? But what if that's the wrong metaphor entirely? This model asks us to imagine something totally different. What if your mind is less like a hard drive and more like a sophisticated radio receiver, capable of tuning into a vast, invisible spectrum of consciousness? Just that one shift in thinking, well, it changes absolutely everything. Okay, so to really get our heads around this mind as receiver idea, we have to start with a brand new definition of cognition itself. We need to step away from the purely biological, mechanical view and start thinking in terms of energy and vibration. So in this framework, cognition isn't just the act of thinking, it's the interpretive frequency of your consciousness. Think of it like this: your awareness has a specific vibrational setting, a unique dial that you're tuned to. And that frequency is what acts as both a lens and a filter, taking the raw, formless energy of, well, everything, and shaping it into the structured reality you actually experience. It's the mechanism that translates the silent music of the universe into the concrete, tangible world you live in every single day.
And this radio analogy, it just breaks down so perfectly. So your cognitive faculty, your ability to think and perceive, that's the radio receiver itself. That's the hardware. The specific stations it can tune into, those are what we can call informational frequencies, the raw data streams of reality. And the most important part, the process of turning those invisible waves into actual music or speech, well, that's modulation. It's how our mind translates the subtle vibrations of consciousness into the patterns we recognize as our world.
So, if our mind really is a receiver, how in the world does it tune in? How does it find a clear signal in what has to be an infinite sea of static? Well, the answer lies in this really crucial process called modulation. You could think of this as the engine room of the whole cognitive process. Modulation is where all the action is. It's this active, dynamic process of transformation. It takes these incredibly subtle, almost imperceptible informational waves floating in the vast field of consciousness, and it organizes them. It gives them structure, it gives them form, it makes them coherent. And that's how we get everything we experience, what we see, what we think, and the very words we use to describe it all. You know, without modulation, our experience would just be random noise, but with it, it becomes a symphony. Now, this whole process isn't random at all. It actually stands on two essential pillars. The first one is resonance. This is basically the principle of like attracts like. Our mind naturally and automatically tunes into frequencies that already match our own internal landscape, our existing beliefs, our current emotional state, our memories. It's why we tend to notice things that confirm what we already think. The second pillar is differentiation. This is our incredible ability to discern, to tell one pattern from another. It's what allows us to see a tree as being separate from the sky, or to feel the difference between joy and sadness. So resonance pulls us toward what's familiar, while differentiation helps us create order out of all that complexity.
When these two forces, this resonance and differentiation, are in perfect, beautiful balance, something amazing happens. Our cognition becomes like a clear, perfectly cut crystal prism. Higher consciousness, which you can imagine as pure white light, can pass right through it and be refracted into this gorgeous, full spectrum of understanding without any distortion. We see reality with clarity, with insight, with depth. But if that prism is clouded or flawed or cracked, if our modulation is unbalanced, that's when we get the psychological distortions of confusion or delusion or obsessive thinking.
Okay, I know this all sounds pretty theoretical, maybe a little out there, right? So let's bring it right back down to earth. How does this energetic process of tuning and modulation actually build the psychological world we all live in day to day? How do we get from these abstract waves to the concrete beliefs and ideas that actually shape our lives? I want you to think of it as a four-step assembly line for creating your reality. It all starts with the raw material, the undifferentiated energy of consciousness. Then, in step 2, the modulation process kicks in, and it filters that energy through those twin actions of resonance and differentiation. Out of that filtering process, coherent patterns start to emerge. These are our thoughts, our perceptions, the very language we use, and finally, over time, those patterns stabilize, they harden, and they become the very frameworks of our worldview, our belief systems, our core concepts, our sense of self. And these are the specific tools our mind uses to build that architecture. Perception is the first filter. It turns all that raw sensory data into something we can recognize. Then you have conceptualization, which creates abstract ideas like justice or love to help us organize and make sense of reality. Belief formation is what makes our interpretations stick around, turning them into the frameworks we actually live by. And finally, judgment and evaluation assign value to everything, telling us what's good or bad, what's important or trivial. These operations are literally building our inner world, brick by brick.
And right here, we arrive at this profound, really important paradox. This entire process is fundamentally creative. It's absolutely amazing. It's how we make meaning out of what would otherwise be a chaotic universe. But at the very same time, it is also inherently limiting. The danger is that we become so identified with our own mental constructs that we completely forget that they're just models. We start to believe the map is the territory, and that's the moment when our greatest tool for understanding the world can become a cage.
So, what happens when this delicate process goes wrong? What happens when the signal gets distorted, when that prism gets clouded, and our receiver starts picking up a whole lot of static? Well, this is where we enter the territory of cognitive dysfunction.
Generally speaking, cognitive dysfunction shows up in one of two opposing forms. First, you've got rigidity. This is where the cognitive dial gets completely stuck on a single station. The mind just becomes fixed, repetitive, and defensive. On the other extreme, you have fragmentation. This is where the dial can't lock on to any station. The signal is pure static, leaving the mind scattered, inconsistent, and chaotic.
Let's take a closer look at rigidity first. Energetically, this is what's called a state of low-frequency entrenchment. The mental field has just become so dense, so fixed in its pattern, that it literally cannot resonate with new or different frequencies. It's like a radio that's only capable of playing one song, over and over and over again, completely unable to tune into any other broadcast, no matter how strong or clear that new signal might be.
And psychologically, this shows up in ways that are probably very familiar to all of us. You see it in dogmatism, where we cling to a belief system without any question. In flexibility, that unwillingness to adapt. Of course, confirmation bias, where we only seek out information that validates what we already think. It becomes an active resistance to new data, and it ultimately leads to becoming completely entrapped in our own projections, mistaking our own internal echo for the sound of the world.
Now let's flip the coin and look at fragmentation. Energetically, this isn't about being stuck at all. It's about being totally incoherent. The mental field is vibrating in multiple, conflicting directions all at once. It's just pure internal static. There's no clear signal, there's no coherent pattern, just this chaotic jumble of frequencies that are pulling the mind apart.
This internal chaos, it manifests psychologically in states like dissociation, that feeling of being disconnected from your own body or from reality. It can lead to chronic confusion or rumination, where thoughts just spin and spin without ever going anywhere. It can also create a profound disconnection from your own emotions, leading to this sense of being completely adrift internally.
So here's the thing, whether the mind is rigid and stuck or fragmented and scattered, the end result is a state that this model calls energetic dissonance. And this is where the theory gets incredibly practical. It's a state of internal disharmony. The vibrations of our thoughts, our emotions, and even our physical body are all out of sync. They're playing different songs, creating this clashing, really uncomfortable internal noise. And the psychological term we all know for this? Cognitive dissonance, that really stressful feeling you get when you hold two contradictory beliefs. This model suggests that's just the mental tip of a much deeper energetic iceberg.
This quote it really captures the danger here perfectly. It highlights this tragic irony. Our mind, the very tool that is meant to help us understand reality, can actually become the walls of our own prison. When it grows rigid, it stops being a window to the world and instead becomes a mirror, reflecting only what we already believe back at ourselves.
But here's the really hopeful part. Dysfunction is not a life sentence. The signal can absolutely be cleared and the receiver can be retuned. So let's explore the path toward healing this dissonance and restoring coherence to our internal world. This is what the source material calls the path to gnosis.
The healing of cognition isn't about learning more facts or just thinking harder. It's about alignment. It's about bringing the different frequencies of our being back into a state of harmony. So what does that mean? It means aligning our thoughts with what is actually true, not just what's comfortable or familiar. It means aligning our emotions with a deeper understanding so they become our guides instead of our tyrants. And ultimately, it means aligning our entire energetic system with the broader flow of consciousness itself.
And when this alignment is finally achieved, when our interpretive frequency harmonizes perfectly with this higher awareness, our cognition transforms into its absolute highest potential, gnosis. Now, this isn't just some fancy word for thinking clearly. Gnosis is described as a state of direct, holistic knowing. It's a way of understanding that goes beyond concepts and language. Thought doesn't just disappear. Instead, it becomes this beautiful, precise instrument used in service of a much deeper knowing rather than being the master of the show.
And this really is the ultimate destination. To arrive at a state where the mind is no longer a distorting filter that's always chopping reality up into separate, disconnected pieces. Instead, it becomes a luminous bridge. In this refined state, consciousness can finally interpret existence not as a series of random events, but as a seamless, unbroken continuum of meaning, where every single part is deeply and beautifully connected to the whole. Well, we hope this deep dive into the energetic model of cognition has given you a lot to think about. It certainly leaves us with a final question. Are you listening to the full spectrum of reality, or maybe just one familiar station? To explore these really profound concepts further, you can find the contact information for Sachin Karnik in the description. Thank you for joining us.